Bienvenidos Latino community.
Welcome back.
Today we are going to be talking about parentification. For those that don't know what that is, how would you best describe it?
As we were talking about it, it's become a little bit more clear that parentification probably has to do when the child is set in the role of the parent a little too much.
Yeah. So I think what we learned, in our program is that there is definitely a hierarchy to a family, right? Like we have parents and then the children. And sometimes unintentionally or intentionally, the hierarchy gets a little bit messed up, and then the children get, bumped up to the parents. And so we kind of wanted to talk about how that could be a little problematic to the family system.
Right.
And so I certainly, have a lot of clients that, have struggled with this. And I think I've even struggled with this myself.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people don't know what it is. I think it's really nice to kind of discuss what that may look like.
And I think that it's important for us as Latinas to talk about it, because parentification does happen in other cultures, but we see it primarily in our culture. And I think it probably stems from us just being a collectivist culture. We also think that it stems from the immigrant process, right? You come here and we need to be collective in making the whole family succeed, and everyone has to be resourceful. So kids are a resource to many of us, right? They were back in the old time, right? They were part of the workers in the farm. So now, of course, it's natural for us to say okay, we're all coming as a family of 5. Now I need you to step up and do what you need to do to help the family, which is great.
Yep.
There's benefits to it, and then there's a lot of pitfalls. And we just want to make sure that we talk about how it is very harmful to a lot of us as children, and then growing up and not knowing how to identify it.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of benefits in the character that it builds. So we were going to talk about both.
Yeah. And I think there's a big difference between being part of a system and helping a family, kind of work through life and survive, right? And even flourish. And so I'm a member of this family system and I'm helping it. It's very different from the parentification, right? And so I think some examples on parentification that, maybe people don't realize it is maybe venting to a child a little bit too much, right?
Emotional, support needed from a child at an inappropriate maturity level.
Yes, and sometimes parents at a young age with their kids are super young, maybe because they feel like they can't talk to no one else, or maybe they don't want to air the family business, or they don't trust people to know some of these personal things that are going on. They'll tell their kids about relationship problems or financial or their stressors, and so their child is kind of they're venting to them. And so that's a way of parentification that people don't realize. The child may not be working at a young age or anything like that, but they're still, it's a heavy burden to kind of know adult problems at an age where they just need to worry about playing or having fun or being a kid.
Right. They have enough to deal with in their social aspect and academics at some point. There's an element to this parentification when there is substance abuse or there's violence in the home. And it makes me wonder if it's an element of the kid sees the parents as not able.
Yeah.
So then, because there is no hierarchy,
right,
my dad drinks too much and he's incapable of supporting or being available to us, or my mom's being abused and there's no parental figure. So then the kid has to step into that role.
Yeah. And usually the oldest. Yeah.
Usually the oldest, regardless of gender, I think, at this point. But because that is such a natural thing of us having to have leaders in the family and organize and direct, I think that when they see the parents as incapable, they have to step in.
Yeah, I think that's, really great points, because you do see that a lot, with families that struggle with, domestic abuse or substance abuse. They're, like you see the children step up a lot, unfortunately. And I think just bringing a light how much that will affect the child, right? Like there could be some benefits, like, oh, I learned how to be independent, or I learned, how to cook, and all this good stuff. But I think the way that it happens, like it was out of necessity, not because maybe they wanted to, or they were, at the right age of, I want to learn this. It was literally because survival.
And I think that there's what happens underneath that. If you are pushed pretty much to, or forced into becoming this responsible role in the family, there's this element of resentment. You become resentful to maybe of your siblings, your younger siblings that don't know what's going on, that don't feel that burden, or to your parents, right? And then because you love them so much, you have this other feeling, other emotion of guilt. So you're thinking, I'm so resentful that I have to do this, and I'm guilty because I shouldn't feel this way. But the reality is that you should definitely feel all of that. It's okay to feel all of that. You're supposed to be a child. You're supposed to be living your role in your age. So of course, why not be upset?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you were saying this earlier about there's a grief to it, right? Like grieving not being able to be a child, grieving the type of childhood you had if you weren't parentified.
Sometimes, and as we're talking about this, I thought, well, what about the adults that are going to be watching these videos and thinking, I was parentified. What do you do then, right? You start reflecting, and of course there's going to be this, like you said, a grief process of, you're right, I wish I would have had a child. I wish I could have gone to sports or after school activities. And that's completely okay to feel. And I think that a lot of us make this coping mechanism of saying, but it made me strong. But I am who I am because of that. And I learned how to take care of a whole family, and I have all of these skills. And that is true also.
For sure.
So you have, so you become independent, you become reliable, you become resourceful. A child that is parentified usually has these qualities. They're mostly a leader, right? Because they have had to be. But then we also see the baggage that comes with that, because it wasn't that the parents were challenging them to become leaders, challenging them to become the responsible, independent kids that they wanted to be.
And I think just being honest, and I think admitting, because I've noticed sometimes it's hard to say that was a bad thing, right? And it doesn't have to be either this really great thing or a bad thing, right? If we don't want to call it that, that's fine. But I think we can understand there's different truths in this, in parentification, right? Like this person could have learned really great skills that they love and appreciate and are really grateful for, and it could also had come at a time where it didn't need to come, right? And I think something that people, kids that were parentified that are now adults, if they decide to be parents, or if they're already parents, I think maybe processing, how do we not do that to this new generation or future kids? How do we finding that balance, which is really difficult, of still teaching responsibility, but not parentifying,
and that's we wanted to define and give examples of parentification, of having that line drawn, there is a sense of parenting your child
Mm-hmm.
through challenge and independence and responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's what builds character, and those are the good things, right?
Yes.
But parentification becomes a burden
Mm-hmm.
when you start taking on the role of the parent.
Yep.
When it is not when it is forced upon you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing you had mentioned earlier is when it starts affecting your life.
Yeah.
Right? As a teenager, if you're not allowed to go hang out with your friends, if you're not able to go to school events, if it's getting in the way of homework,
Yep.
if you're not able to get yourself ready, and you have to get the whole family ready, and you're responsible for dropping off, cooking, picking up, doing the laundry. I mean, you're pretty much the parent.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem.
Yes.
When you start giving up your role, yourself, your life.
Yep, and I think that made me also kind of realize or think of the adults that even are getting parentified, right? Like they could be affecting your work. Like,
What do you mean? Tell me more.
So adults that maybe are still living at home,
I see, yeah.
but they have the responsibility that parents should have, or that, they're still, you pay all the bills because you're living here, because you're an adult now. You take care of, you take your little siblings to school because, I'm at work. If there's a teacher meeting, you go instead of me because I can't make it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also a type of parentification that it can be a lot, even for children of all ages, even adult children.
Right.
And I think,
That's true.
Placing that responsibility of a parent on your child is, I think, big part of this message.
Right. And again, I don't want to be insensitive to like our community, because I understand the immigrant process, right? Everybody needs to help. Everyone needs to be hands-on.
Yeah.
So for the single mothers that have to work 2 or 3 jobs, there is no such thing as having her be the parent or the role. She has to just provide.
Yeah.
So the older siblings have to step in and take care of that.
Yep.
And we get that, and I don't want to act like it's not going to happen and it's not available to everybody. But there are opportunities where you can say, like, this is really important for me. It's your day off, and I really want to go out with my friends.
Yeah.
That's when you have to require yourself to speak up and also show that you also have needs as a kid, as a teen, as a child of the family. And everyone has their own responsibility, and we know that sometimes it just has to happen that way.
For sure.
But also don't forget that you also need stuff for yourself too. And for the parents, try to balance it out. Try to understand, like, this is not your role and not your responsibility, but we appreciate you for helping the family, helping the siblings, and take as much as you need anywhere else. And how do I support you? Right?
Yes.
Like, just add on anything that you can offer in support, so that it sort of levels out that hierarchy.
Yeah, I think too, the word that came up for me as you said that was expectation. Like,
Yes.
right, like, don't expect your kid to do things just because they're your kid, right? Like, well, you should do this because you're the oldest kid, or you should do this because, I'm at work working hard. It's a conversation. I think context matters.
Yeah.
Right, that the age of your child matters. Are they 7-year-old? Are they 13? Are they 21?
Right.
I think that the age matters. I think the situation matters. The threshold of your child matters. Some people can accept more than others. And so I think conversations are so important, like, hey, like, I'm asking you to do things, I do really need the help, this is our situation. How do you feel about it?
Right.
Is it too much? Are you okay? Do we need to figure something out? So I think, like, taking them into consideration,
What can I do for you?
Yes, what can I do for you? You're helping to taking care of the family. How can I take care of you too?
Right, and I think that that's something that is such a huge complaint for the adults that realize they were parentified.
Yeah.
It's a common, no one took care of me.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard that, but I've heard it several times, and it's like, you're right.
Yeah.
Or when is it my turn to be taken care of?
Yes.
I've always taken care of my siblings. I always took care of my parents. I always took care of everybody in the family, and now my kids, and now my husband, or vice versa. And we don't want it to get to that point.
Which I think it's another part of parentification, right? I think that also maybe creates the difference between being responsible and having duties and parentification. With parentification, I think the kids are responsible for the parents.
It's like obligation.
Yes.
Like this is yes.
Like their emotions, right? Like I am responsible to take care of your emotions and your well-being, and so I find myself doing these things.
Right. And now it just becomes part of their identity.
Yeah.
And it's hard to turn off.
It is, yeah.
It's hard to ask for help at some point.
Exactly. You almost feel like, my identity is to take care of others.
Yeah.
It's I'm last on that list.
Right. And like you said earlier, as parents now, the plan is not to parentify or go the complete opposite way and be completely permissive of saying like, no, don't ask him to do anything. Definitely not. You want a parent to challenge, to be responsible, to be independent, to be resourceful, right? Have rules, but just keep your role as a child or whatever age you're at.
Yeah. So that was our talk about parentification. We wanted to explain what it was and how it may look like in families. If you have any questions, or maybe need some more clarification, or are a little bit confused of what parentification is, let us know. Comment below, and I will be happy to answer.
And if you need any support in dealing with any feelings that have come up through this conversation, you can always connect with us, and we can reach out to you with more resources, give you information on nearby therapists or other support groups.
Thank you for joining, and we'll see you for our next talk.
See you next time.